guys, hey, welcome back to another Sunday School. It's so good to be back with each of you. Well, you may notice that today I'm wearing a mask. And I'm wearing a mask because this last week we had a possible exposure to COVID. All of us that were involved are all isolating, and we're all doing okay right now as we wait for the results of tests. It's just important that we all work to keep each other safe. Today we've got a great lesson. Moses Abraham is back interviewing Joseph. We've got a song from Paul Pritchard and some harp music from Amy Moreland. We want to thank Lily and Jolene and the Herman family for doing a beautiful job lighting our candle of joy last week and doing communion. This week, we light the candle of love. But before we get there, we want to celebrate a very special birthday. This week, it's Olive's birthday. So would you all join with me in singing Happy Birthday to Olive? Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Olive. Happy birthday to you. Olive, know that we love you and we wish you a wonderful birthday. Well, with that, let's head on in and light the candle of love.
We light the fourth candle of Advent for love.
Love is a flame that burns in my heart. Jesus has come and will never depart. When God is a child, there's joy in our song. The last shall be first, and the weak shall be strong, and none shall be afraid.
Joseph and Mary. Joseph was working in his carpenter's shop beside his home in Nazareth. From his window, he could see a little cluster of houses and smoke rising from the fires. He often looked out, hoping that Mary would come in and visit with him, with her parents. He dreamed of the day when she would enter his house alone and become his wife. Joseph loved her with all his heart. One day, Mary stopped by his house and he ran out to meet her. She was very quiet and still, and she said nothing for a long time. "What is it, Mary?" he asked. "I have something to tell you." "Yes?" "A baby is going to be born." At first, Joseph thought she was talking about someone else, but gradually he realized that she was talking about her own baby. Joseph looked at her in astonishment, shaking his head. He could not believe that Mary was expecting somebody else's baby, and he could hardly hear what she was saying. God's baby, the Holy Spirit, an angel from heaven. The words all jumbled in his mind, and he walked away tearfully. That night, Joseph decided to call off his marriage to Mary. He would do it very quietly and without any fuss. He would protect her as much as he could, but he knew that he could not go on. His pillow was wet with tears, but he fell asleep, still thinking of her. But in the darkness of his dreams, a light appeared. All around him, beyond him, a great light was shining, and a voice spoke to him. "Joseph, Joseph, son of David, don't be afraid to take Mary as your wife. Everything she has told you is true. She will give birth to a son, and you are to name him Jesus. He will save his people from their sins." The next morning, Joseph ran down to Mary's house. Mary, Mary, an angel! I've seen an angel, and God has told me that. The whole story came tumbling out breathlessly as Joseph promised to marry her and care for the child. Mary listened, standing there very still in the sunshine. She stood and looked at Joseph and smiled because she already knew that everything would be all right.
The birth of Jesus. Just before Jesus was born, the Emperor Caesar Augustus ordered his officials to collect the names of every person living in the Roman Empire. There was a strict rule that each man had to register in the town his family came from so that no one would be missed and avoid paying taxes. So Joseph needed to travel to Bethlehem, more than 70 miles away. He was anxious about Mary because she was heavily pregnant, but they had to make the journey. On their way, they passed through ravines and wild places, along desert tracks, up steep hills, until they reached the little town of Bethlehem, high on the hills beside Jerusalem. It was nightfall and very cold. The streets were full of Roman soldiers and people from different places, men and women running to and fro, shouting, chickens squawking, dogs scavenging in the rubbish. Joseph looked to the left and to the right, but every home was packed with people. Every inn was overflowing with visitors. At last they struggled into an old courtyard at the back of the last inn in Bethlehem. "There's only the stable for the animals," said the innkeeper. "That's all the space I've got. You can sleep in the hay." "My wife's expecting a baby," Joseph called after him, but the man had already gone back to his guests who were shouting for food. Mary smiled and said, "I'll be all right here in the hay. It's very comfortable." And as she lay down, she felt her first birth pangs. Soon, in the middle of the night, the baby was born. In the darkness of that cold stable, Mary took her firstborn son, wrapped him in cloths, and put him down to sleep in the manger.
Well, hi there, Moses Abraham again. You know, it's that time of year, one of my favorite times, and because every week people say, "You look like that guy from the North Pole." So, in honor of that guy, I'm going to put on my Santa cap today. There we go. Well, that was a great interview last week with Mary, the mother of Jesus. Today, we continue the season of Advent, the season of preparing for Christmas and the coming of Jesus with the fourth Sunday, the Sunday of Love. Now, using the YouTube option on our Bible teleportation app, we are going to talk today with Joseph, the carpenter from Bethlehem. So here we go. Welcome, Joseph. I am glad you could join us today. We're continuing to do these interviews digitally on YouTube to keep everyone safe as this 21st century pandemic continues. Today, we are learning about your story, Joseph. We appreciate you taking the time to talk to us. Would you be willing to answer a few questions?
Okay, sure. I can do that. I'm not much of a speaker. I prefer to talk with my hands by making things for others.
Could you share a little bit about yourself, where you are from, and what you do?
I am Joseph from Bethlehem, a little town on the hills outside of Jerusalem. Like my father and brothers, I am a carpenter and stonemason. I build things out of wood and stone. My brothers and father and I have a small shop in Bethlehem. My family arranged for me to be engaged to the daughter of a family friend in Nazareth. Her name is Mary.
Now, tell us about Mary and about Bethlehem.
Mary is a gentle and kind, strong and wise. She has ways of listening and loving people just as they are. I struggle with words and get tongue-tied, but Mary's always understands what I am feeling. Mary loves to watch the sunrise and the sunset and listen to the strong Song of the Birds. I wanted to make something special for her. I carved her a rocking chair for her. Seeing the joy I brought her filled me with joy. I am better at speaking with my hands, and nothing gives me greater joy than making something that truly helps someone else.
Now, we heard from Mary last week. She loves that rocking chair you made her. And you are right. There is a joy that comes when we open ourselves up to the needs of those around us and dare to love. Love does not require a lot of words. Now, you were in Bethlehem and Mary was in Nazareth. Did you and Mary get to see each other very much?
It's hard being far away and not getting to see her often. We wrote letters and looking forward to her. Sometimes I was able to make the trip to Nazareth. In my letters, I often send little creatures that I carve for her. When I heard that her cousin Elizabeth was going to have a baby and that Mary was going to be sent to help her, I was overjoyed. Mary would now only know. Mary would now only be about an hour away in a neighboring village.
You must have been excited to have her closer. What happened next?
I didn't hear from Mary for a while, and which was not like her. I was getting worried, but I knew she was busy taking care of her cousin. Then one of my friends who lived near Nazareth, near Zachariah and Elizabeth, came by our shop. He pulled me aside and said there was rumors going around their village that Mary was going to have a baby too. How could that be?
I can only imagine how hard it must have been to hear that. Rumors have a way of worrying us. What did you do?
I decided it was time to get to see Mary. As I turned down the street to their home, I saw Mary. She had her back to me, and she was hanging clothes out to dry. She turned around and smiled, the smile that always melts my heart and makes my knees feel weak. I started to smile too, and then I saw her belly. Mary was going to have a baby. How could that be? I turned and ran, tears running down my cheeks.
I am so sorry. That must have hurt so much. What did you do?
I wrote Mary and told her I wished her love and happiness always, and heartbroken, confused, and hurting, I headed to bed.
I can only imagine how much hurt you must have been feeling. That was a really loving and kind thing you did, but that must have been a hard night.
It was, I tossed and turned and struggled to sleep. I was hurting, but I was also scared for Mary. When I finally fell asleep, I had a dream like nothing I had ever dreamed before. An angel appeared to me, and I told me not to be afraid. It told me that Mary loved me and that this child was God's child, the Messiah that we had been waiting for. The angel told me to marry Mary, that God had chosen us to raise God's son, and we were to call him Jesus.
Wow, that must have been some dream. So what did you do?
I stayed up all night carving a wooden crib. I hammered, carved, I sanded it so that it was as smooth as silk. As the morning light began to rise over the hills of Bethlehem, I dusted my shelf off and cleaned myself up. I put on my robe and wrapped my stole clothes around my head. As it was cold, crisp morning, I wrapped the crib in cloth and headed quickly as I could see Mary.
You worked really hard that night. I bet that crib was amazing. What did you do? What happened when you got to Mary's?
As I approached Zachariah and Elizabeth's house, my heart was pounding. I could barely breathe. The words I had practiced in my head vanished in a blink of the eye. I knocked. Part of me wanted to run, but I stood there, my knees shaking. Mary opened the door. I could see she had been crying. She looked at me confused, uncertain. And then the words just trembled out of me. I told her I was sorry for running off hurting her. I told her I loved her, and I told her about the dream of the angel falling to my knees. I told her that she was the one whom I wanted to marry. I laid the crib before her. I promised her I would not leave her, that if she would still love me, I would love her and the baby that God was giving us with all my heart, always.
Wow, what happened next?
Mary gave me one of those smiles that melted my heart. She opened the crib and loved it. I knew as long as I had breath that she and the baby would be my world. We got married and went back to Nazareth to be close to her family so they could help her. I opened a small carpenter shop there. Things seemed to be coming together for the birth, and then we got a Roman decree that every family was to go to their hometown to be counted. This was so that the Romans could tax us. You did not cross Rome, so Mary and I would have to make the long trip back to Bethlehem.
Oh no. I have heard that the Romans were pretty harsh on countries they controlled and the taxes could be tough. Was there any way Mary would not have to make that journey because she was pregnant?
None. I pleaded with our officials in Nazareth to let Mary stay there and I would make the journey, but they would not budge. Mary had to go too. Her parents let us take their donkey. I loaded up supplies for the journey and helped Mary onto the donkey. It was a hard journey. Every bump on the road caused Mary pain. She was tired and sore. Even when it was hard, she was stronger than me. Finally, we, along with many others, arrived in Bethlehem. Mary was due any day. Bethlehem was packed. The streets were full, and the inns had no room.
So what did you do?
We stayed in a cave where the family kept all the animals. You might call it a stable today. They brought blankets and water and hot water and clothes to make a bed in the straw. It was damp and it smelled like animals. This was not what I wanted for Mary. It was a long night, but in the early hours of the morning he was born. His cries pierced the darkness of that night. We washed him off and wrapped him in some of the cloths. And when I held him for the first time, I knew my heart could love someone so much.
Wow, a holy night. If all of you listening read Luke 2 and Matthew 1 and 2, you can hear the rest of the story. Thank you so much for sharing, Joseph. Do you have any closing thoughts?
Remember that you loved, and even when it's hard, when it's scary, when you don't know what the future holds, you can love. Loving one another is both the hardest and the greatest thing we ever do.
We want to thank Joseph for joining us today. Next week, I'm taking Christmas off, but you will be having a special visit from a resident from the North Pole. I wish you all a Merry Christmas, and remember, you are loved.
Mary, did you know that your baby boy would one day walk on water? Mary, did you know that your baby boy would save our sons and daughters? Did you know that your baby boy has come to make you new? This child that you delivered, the sons deliver you. Baby, did you know that your baby boy would give sight to the blind man? Mary, did you know that your baby boy would calm a storm with his hand? Did you know that your baby boy has walked where angels trod? And when you kiss your little baby, you've kissed the face of God. Mary, did you know that your baby boy is Lord of all creation? Mary, did you know that your baby boy will one day rule the nations? Did you know that your baby boy in heaven's perfect land, and the sleeping child you're holding is the great I am?
As Jesus gathered with his disciples, he took the bread, broke it, and blessed it. "This is my body broken for you." He took the cup, poured the juice, and said, "This is my blood poured out for many. Do this in remembrance of me."
Well, friends, we're at the fourth Sunday in Advent. We've had the Sundays of hope, peace, joy, and now we're at the Sunday of love. How will you be loving this week? Something for you to ponder. Have a great week and a Merry Christmas, and we'll see you next Sunday. Bye-bye.